Hello and welcome to the Classic Hollywood Movie You Should Know. I'm Nate Washburn. This week, in honor of Halloween, I wanted to talk about one of the greatest horror movie sequels ever made, 1935's The Bride of Frankenstein, starring Boris Karloff, Colin Clive, and Elsa Lanchester, directed by James Whale. Now, if you want some information on the first in this franchise, 1931's Frankenstein, I actually did an earlier Classic Hollywood Movie You Should Know about that. I'll drop the link in the little notes on this one. But it's funny, I wanted to do this movie, The Bride of Frankenstein, because with horror movies these days, it's like they become such a big franchise. Slasher films, these monster movies. They have the first one and then it spirals from there, and you get up to Saw 9 or Friday the 13th 12, Jason Goes to Hell, and Nightmare on Elm Street 11, like all this stuff. And it seems like such a modern phenomenon, but back in Hollywood's golden age, they were doing the same thing. When they had a possible franchise, they took advantage, they milked it. And a good way to sort of document that is looking at The Bride of Frankenstein. Because in the original, in 1931's Frankenstein, you watch the movie, and the way that the movie climaxes, it's really clear that the original ending, Henry Frankenstein, the doctor, not Victor like we all think, but Henry, and the monster are going to die. However, Universal Studios and Carl Laemmle Jr., who produced it, realized they had this massive hit on their hands, and he wanted to save these characters. So there's a weird little tacked on ending where you see that Henry's still alive. And then this movie, The Bride of Frankenstein in 1935, it picks up right where 1931's Frankenstein ends, with villagers surrounding the smoking hulk of this burned mill. And you find out quickly that the monster was able to survive. He hid in some water that was under the mill and is now free to wreak havoc and cause mayhem amongst the villagers and throughout the town. Now, this movie gets classified as a horror movie, and it is, because, the monster is a monster. There's some sort of suspenseful moments, but it's not really scary. It's fun. This movie is it's a fun movie. The performances border on camp at times. There's a character, Minnie, played by Una O'Connor, that she is just so over the top and ridiculous. She's hilarious every time she's on screen. But what evens out this movie is honestly Boris Karloff's performance as the monster. Boris Karloff is a fantastic actor, and he makes you sympathize with his character. You're watching this, and the whole point of the movie is, as an audience member, you want these villagers to catch this monster, but it's almost impossible not to sympathize with the monster. He's looking for a friend. He says it several times in the movie, companionship. He kind of wants to be left alone. He doesn't want these people chasing him, trying to kill him. I also wanted to talk about one of my favorite parts in this movie. So before you get to the smoking ruins of the mill and you find out the monster's alive and the story picks up, there's this little prologue between Mary Shelley, played by Elsa Lanchester, and Lord Byron and Percy Shelley. It's taking place sort of supposedly right after she's written this story, and it works almost as a previously on Frankenstein, because Lord Byron's character starts talking to Mary, and he's like, I can't believe, I'm paraphrasing of course, but he says, I can't believe the story that you came up with where this scientist is stealing all these deceased bodies and he creates a monster and brings it to life and it murders people and creates havoc and then burns up in a windmill. And then Mary Shelley says, well, there's more to the story. In fact, they didn't die in the windmill. And then the story goes from there. But it's this hilarious little recap if you haven't seen 1931's Frankenstein. And it makes it so that you can watch The Bride of Frankenstein without watching the first film. Plus, if you are a fan of Young Frankenstein, the Mel Brooks, Gene Wilder classic from the 70s, there are so many bits from Young Frankenstein that come from The Bride of Frankenstein. I didn't even realize it until I was watching it. And there's all these moments like the blind hermit and the character that Una O'Connor plays, Minnie, is Frau Blucher, and all this stuff that just shows up. And I kept noticing parallels between Young Frankenstein and The Bride of Frankenstein, so that was super fun to see. So for Halloween, do yourself a favor, give a watch to 1935's The Bride of Frankenstein. It's super fun, it's a little campy, but it's definitely worth a watch. Highly recommend it. It's this week's classic Hollywood movie you should know. I'm Nate Washburn. Keep watching.